The year was 2387, and Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance. Ahead of him floated a vision that both humbled and unsettled him, the station at Nexus Prime. It was no ordinary orbital outpost. No human shipyard could have built such a thing. Its towers stretched for miles, crystalline spires interlacing with metallic arcs that shimmered under the star's pale light. Thousands of docking ports glowed faintly as vessels of all shapes and sizes came and went, an unceasing tide of interstellar commerce. Some ships dwarfed cities, while others looked more like living organisms than machines. Humanity had imagined alien civilizations for centuries, in stories and speculation. But no speculation could prepare a man to stand before it. Morrison had served Earth's Navy for 20 years, through wars and crises that had tested him. Yet even his most difficult battles seemed trivial here. What Earth called progress, the galaxy called childhood. Chief Science Officer Lisa Parker moved beside him, her scanner alive with incomprehensible readings. "Captain," she murmured, her voice low with awe, "the energy signatures. They're operating on a level we've never touched. Some of these ships could erase our fleet with a single shot." Lisa had studied every scrap of information Earth had gathered during the 6-month journey to this station. Yet now, face to face with it, she felt small. In the cold glow of Nexus Prime, humanity was no longer the center of its own story. At the tactical console, Security Chief Ryan Cooper kept his hand close to his sidearm, though he knew the weapon was meaningless here. His instincts, sharpened by 3 colonial wars, screamed caution. He had fought insurgents on Mars, pirates in the Belt, even mutineers in the outer colonies. But compared to this? Those conflicts were playground fights, scraps between children. The Galactic Confederation, this ancient order humanity was about to meet, could crush them without noticing. Still, Earth had sent them. And their mission was clear: make contact, learn, and, if possible, join. The silence on the bridge was broken when Officer Amy Davis received the first transmission. The voice that flowed through the speakers was strange and layered, harmonies and registers no human throat could produce. Yet the meaning was unmistakable. They were granted permission to dock at Port 7. Amy's hands shook slightly as she confirmed the approach vector. Years of training in the Confederation's language had prepared her, but hearing it spoken by actual alien beings sent a shiver through her. She checked her translation systems, humanity's fragile lifeline in this negotiation. Behind her, Ambassador Kate Johnson adjusted the notes on her tablet. She had been Earth's best hope for this role, chosen for her experience in the lunar colonies, where disputes between human factions had often felt like first contact missions. But this was no colony. This was a civilization that had thrived for 3,000 years, a galactic order of hundreds of species. One misplaced word could doom humanity's chance at belonging, or worse, provoke consequences too vast to imagine. Docking was slow. 2 hours passed as alien technicians guided the Defiance into place, not with crude clamps or cables, but with gravity beams Earth's science could barely comprehend. Through the viewing ports, the crew watched as creatures in environmental suits drifted along the hull, their movements alien and elegant. Some had 4 arms, others hovered without any visible means of support. The sheer diversity of life was staggering. Morrison felt the thought pressing at him: would humanity ever belong here? Or were they simply intruders at the gates of gods? When the airlock cycled open, the human delegation saw their first Confederation officials. The leader was unmistakable, matched perfectly to the briefing files. A Superior, tall, nearly 8 feet, and composed of crystalline blue skin that glowed from within. 6 arms moved with unnerving grace, as though every gesture carried centuries of practice. The being's translator emitted perfect English. "Welcome to Nexus Prime. The Confederation is curious about humanity." Ambassador Johnson stepped forward, heart pounding, and delivered her greeting. It was formal, polished, rehearsed endlessly across the voyage. She spoke of peace, curiosity, and humanity's wish to find its place among the stars. The Superior, High Administrator Velter, studied her silently before gesturing for them to follow. They entered the station. The corridors were vast, ceilings lost in shadow, walls covered in displays of shifting symbols. Dozens of languages moved across them simultaneously. The crew passed alien species of every imaginable form. Some towered above them. Others slithered across polished floors. Some avoided eye contact. Others bowed slightly toward the Zephyrian leading them. It was not said aloud, but the power structure was clear. Among the Confederation, the Zephyrians ruled. And humanity, newly arrived, was at the very bottom. Eventually they reached a chamber, a hall of floating platforms suspended in space. Representatives of countless species debated, traded, and bargained. The sound was overwhelming. Voices and frequencies that made human ears ache layered together in a symphony of incomprehension. Lisa's scanner pinged with bursts of energy she could not classify. "Captain, their physics, we're barely grasping shadows." Morrison said nothing. He simply walked with the others, trying to hold his posture straight. Humanity was being measured in every glance. At last, Velter brought them into a smaller meeting room. The space was designed with adaptability in mind. Environmental fields created microclimates so dozens of species could breathe and function together. Amy Davis quietly checked her translation systems again. If they failed now, humanity's voice would vanish before it even began. The meeting began. Velter explained the structure of the Confederation, how it had endured 3 millennia, uniting hundreds of worlds under a common purpose. Peace, prosperity, stability. A system of contributions and protections. Every member world, he said, gave something of itself, raw materials, technologies, labor. In return, they were granted access to knowledge, trade, and the shield of Confederation fleets. Ambassador Johnson asked the obvious question, what would humanity need to provide? Velter's crystalline face remained unreadable. Each species contributes according to its strength. Some give technology, others resources. Some give their people. The tribute system sustains the whole. The word tribute lingered in the air like poison. Morrison stiffened. His naval instincts bristled at it. But he held his tongue. Lisa Parker leaned forward, her scientific curiosity overcoming her fear. She asked about technology, about medicine that could extend human lifespans by centuries, about energy systems that could power entire star systems. The answers were vague but tantalizing. Humanity could rise into near immortality if they joined. Yet Ambassador Johnson, seasoned in negotiation, felt the edge beneath the promise. Every gift had a price. At the end of the session, Velter offered his closing words. An assessment team would be sent to Earth, he explained. They would measure humanity's resources, its capabilities, its strengths. Only then would the Confederation decide the terms of humanity's membership. The process would take 1 solar cycle. But his tone left no doubt, refusal was not an option. As the humans returned to their ship, the reality pressed down on them. Their species' fate now rested in agreements written by alien hands. Humanity's voice had spoken at last among the stars. But whether it would echo or be silenced forever remained unknown. Captain Morrison paused by the viewing port before departure. Beyond the glass, the towers of Nexus Prime stretched endlessly, a cathedral of civilizations older than Earth's first civilizations. And in his heart, he wondered, was humanity ready for the price of admission? Where the aliens walked, silence followed. No human dared interrupt. The unspoken truth grew louder each day, Earth was valuable, but not because of who lived there. Weeks passed before the final report was delivered. The Confederation's terms were simple and brutal. Humanity would be granted membership. In exchange, it would provide 30% of its industrial output, redirected to Confederation fleets. Exclusive access to rare elements mined across the solar system. And most chilling of all, a human military levy. A tithe of soldiers, to fight not for Earth, but for the Confederation's wars. The reaction on Earth was immediate and explosive. In the United America's Parliament, politicians shouted across the chamber. "This is conquest dressed as diplomacy," one declared. In the halls of the European Union, voices demanded acceptance, arguing that refusal meant annihilation. In the Asian Alliance, leaders calculated logistics: how many billions could Earth afford to lose before its own societies collapsed? For ordinary people, fear mingled with wonder. Some believed the Confederation offered salvation, immortality through alien medicine, limitless energy, protection from hostile species. Others saw chains. "We traded one empire for another," protesters cried in the streets. In the war rooms beneath the Pentagon, Captain Morrison and his crew faced Earth's leaders. Holographic displays of Confederation ships floated above the table, each one a titan compared to Earth's navy. A general slammed his fist on the console. "We can't fight them. We'd be ash in a week." Cooper's voice cut through the room, steady and cold. "And if we bow? We'll fight their wars instead of ours. How long before our children die on alien soil, bleeding for causes we don't understand?" Lisa Parker whispered the thought none wanted to hear. "Maybe survival is worth servitude." Silence again. Ambassador Johnson rose. Her voice was soft but firm. "Survival without freedom is not survival. It's a half-life. A shadow. We are human because we choose. Because we decide our own future. If we surrender that, we cease to exist, even if our bodies live on." Her words hung heavy. Morrison knew history would remember this moment, not for its outcome, but for its clarity. For the first time in 500,000 years, Earth faced an empire beyond itself. The decision would define humanity forever. The UES Defiance slipped free of Nexus Prime's orbit and began the long return toward Earth. But the ship did not feel like the proud vessel it had been when it departed. A silence hung over the crew, the silence of realization. Humanity had reached the stars. But the stars already belonged to others. In the mess hall, officers gathered without formal order, seeking clarity in one another's company. The mission logs could not capture the unease pressing against every heart. The word tribute circled like a vulture. Lisa Parker broke the silence first. "They weren't inviting us into some federation of equals. They were inviting us into a hierarchy." Her hands tightened around a steaming mug of coffee. "We'd be another cog. Another resource to exploit." Ryan Cooper leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, his expression hardened by years of combat. "Exploit is too gentle a word. They're not asking, they're taking." The Zephyrians didn't say it, but everyone in that chamber knows. If we resist, they'll crush us. If we join, we hand them the keys. Ambassador Johnson sat at the head of the table, quiet until now. "You think I don't know that?" Every sentence in that hall was calculated. They weren't offering. They were testing. Watching if humanity would bend. She looked at each of them in turn. "And if we don't bend? Then they'll break us." Morrison remained standing, gazing out the viewport at the scattered stars. "So the question is simple. What price is survival worth? And what price is freedom worth?" The room offered no answer. Back on Earth, the arrival of the Confederation's assessment team sent shockwaves across governments, media, and ordinary people. Ships unlike anything humanity had dreamed of descended into orbit, sleek, silver vessels humming with controlled gravity fields. From Beijing to New York, from Mumbai to Nairobi, the news carried the same awestruck footage. Humanity was no longer alone. But awe soon gave way to fear. The aliens had not come to learn, they had come to measure. The assessment team traveled to every continent, escorted by the Defiance's crew as uneasy intermediaries. The Zephyrian leader, flanked by two insectoid Darkai advisors, toured Earth cities with cold efficiency. They walked among human crowds without visible emotion. Their eyes did not see architecture or culture. They saw resources. In Africa's mineral-rich belt, they measured untapped veins of cobalt and platinum. In the Amazon, they scanned biomass and genetic diversity. In Asia's megacities, they counted human bodies like livestock. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, whispers spread. Species already under the Confederation's tribute system watched Earth struggle with quiet fascination. Some pitied the humans. Some mocked them. And some, those who had bent their knees long ago, envied them. Because humanity still had a choice, however impossible. But not all whispers came from vassals. Among the neutral worlds, among the rare civilizations that had resisted Confederation rule, new interest stirred. A young species had arrived. A species untested, fragile, but burning with defiance. The Harari, a reclusive and ancient race, spoke cryptically in their hidden enclaves. Perhaps the cycle turns again. Perhaps the architects stir. To most, these words meant nothing. But to a few, they hinted at something older, deeper, and far more dangerous than the Confederation. On the Defiance, Morrison stared once more into the stars as Earth's governments argued. His reflection looked back at him from the glass. A soldier, yes. But also a witness. Sir? Cooper asked quietly, stepping beside him. Morrison did not turn. What do you see out there, Ryan? Cooper followed his gaze. Stars, countless and cold. A battlefield waiting to happen. Morrison finally spoke the thought that had haunted him since Nexus Prime. No. A test. The Confederation thinks it knows us. Thinks we'll kneel. But humanity's story has never been written by those who underestimated us. Cooper gave a grim smile. Then let's make sure it stays that way. The stars remained silent. But for the first time, Morrison felt not fear, but resolve. The decision was near. Earth would bend, or it would break. And in that choice, humanity's place in the galaxy would be born. The debates on Earth dragged on for weeks, each session more heated than the last. Economists drew graphs predicting collapse under tribute. Generals drew maps of feudal resistance. Politicians drew lines in the sand that meant nothing in the face of a galaxy-spanning empire. But outside the chambers of power, a quiet truth was taking root. Humanity had spent millennia tearing itself apart, then reassembling, then tearing again. Nations had risen and fallen. Wars had burned continents. Empires had ruled and crumbled. Yet one pattern remained: when pressed against extinction, humanity did not submit. It adapted. It fought. It endured. That truth now whispered through underground channels, across encrypted networks, through hushed conversations in crowded cities. Maybe the Confederation did not need to know all of humanity's mind. Maybe it only needed to see the mask. On the UEES Defiance, Captain Morrison convened his officers in the dim glow of the strategy room. A projection of Earth hung in the center, its blue oceans and green continents fragile against the black. We can't fight them head-on, he said simply. Everyone here knows that. Cooper's jaw tightened. Then what? Do we play along? March our soldiers into their wars until we're bled dry? No, Morrison's voice was firm. We give them what they want, on the surface. But beneath it, we prepare. Quietly. Patiently. We learn their weaknesses. We study their technology. We build in the shadows. Lisa leaned forward, eyes gleaming with dangerous curiosity. A double game. Morrison nodded. If survival means kneeling, then we kneel, but only to rise later. We make them believe we've submitted. Meanwhile, we sharpen the blade. Ambassador Johnson exhaled slowly. It's a dangerous gamble. If they discover our deception. They won't. Morrison cut her off gently, but his eyes betrayed the weight of doubt. Because we'll be careful. Because we have to be. Silence followed, but it was not silence of despair. It was the silence of decision. When the Confederation Council returned for Earth's answer, Ambassador Johnson delivered it with poise that masked her fury. "Humanity accepts membership," she said, her voice echoing across the chamber of alien delegates. "We will contribute resources, knowledge, and manpower. We will share in the burdens and the protections of the Confederation." The Zephyrian administrator inclined his crystalline head, light pulsing faintly beneath his translucent skin. "Then humanity is bound to the Confederation. Your place among the stars is secured." Cheers erupted from some corners of Earth when the news broke. Survival, they believed, had been won. But others saw the chains, gleaming beneath the promises. In the streets of Cairo, London, and Sao Paulo, protesters raised banners, "Better to die free than live as tribute." On Luna's colonies, whispers of rebellion spread like sparks in oxygen-rich air. And in the quiet halls of hidden bunkers, plans began to form. The Confederation wasted no time in extracting its tribute. Fleets of harvesters arrived to strip the asteroid belt of rare elements. Alien overseers began training camps on Earth, drilling the first cohorts of human soldiers destined to fight wars on worlds they would never see again. But humanity did not remain idle. Lisa Parker led secret teams that reverse-engineered fragments of Confederation tech, smuggling knowledge into hidden laboratories. Cooper drilled hand-picked units not for service, but for resistance, teaching them to fight like ghosts, not soldiers. And Morrison, quiet and steady, built a network of allies, scientists, officers, and even civilians, who understood the truth: submission was camouflage. The Confederation believed they had tamed humanity. But in reality, they had only planted the seed of defiance. Far from Earth, in the cold reaches of unexplored space, another story unfolded. The Harari, an ancient, enigmatic race that had long avoided Confederation control, watched the humans with interest. In their cryptic way, they spoke among themselves. Another cycle begins. The Confederation grows fat. It forgets. The architects will return. Few outside the Harari had ever heard of the architects. Fewer still believed they were real. But the Harari remembered. They remembered a time before the Confederation, before even the Zephyrians. A time when builders older than stars had walked the galaxy. A time when civilizations far greater than today's had fallen into dust. And now, they whispered, the signs were stirring again. On Earth, Morrison stood once more before a viewport, watching as alien freighters carried away tons of Earth's minerals. The planet below spun on, oblivious to the larger storm. Cooper joined him, as he often did. "Feels like we traded one prison for another." Morrison's gaze never left the stars. Prisons can be escaped. Chains can be broken. And the Confederation? Morrison's jaw set. "They think we're children. That we'll obey. They don't understand what it means to be human." Cooper's smile was grim. "They will." Months later, on a distant world far from human eyes, the Confederation fleet engaged a rogue species in battle. Human soldiers fought alongside alien legions for the first time. They fought bravely. They fought like mortals among titans. But word spread quickly through the ranks. The humans were different. Their strategies unpredictable. Their ferocity unsettling. Even alien commanders admitted it. Humanity fought not like servants, but like predators unleashed. Whispers began to spread through the Confederation. Perhaps this new species was not as docile as expected. In the void between galaxies, where light itself faltered, something older than the Confederation stirred. Vast structures slumbered in the dark, patient as stone, waiting for the cycle to turn. And when it did, the galaxy would discover a truth it had forgotten. That civilizations fall. That empires crumble. That even gods of war can be broken. Humanity did not know it yet. But its rebellion against the Confederation was only the beginning. The true test lay ahead. The architects were waking. And in their shadow, the galaxy would need more than old empires and ancient orders. It would need the one species foolish, or fearless, enough to fight them. It would need humanity.